All right, so optimizing your 208 volt commercial business. So this is definitely a challenging market that we've seen in the commercial area for a number of reasons. My name is Mike Rogerson. I'm Director of Marketing at SolarEdge. Ben Frank will be joining me. He's our Director of National CNI Sales at SolarEdge. You want to say hi, Ben?
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are in the country.
Great. And Ben is our local expert, so he'll be conducting most of the webinar. This is what we're going to be talking about. Basically, the agenda is broken out into four areas: using the right tool for the job, looking at the expanded 208 volt solutions available, optimizing your project, and then we're going to go into a sample project and we're going to look at some different options and how they all stack up. First of all, I want to introduce the topic of commercial jobs by looking at the commercial market. So according to Green Tech Media, you can see their data here. Looking at 2017, 18, and 19, we're seeing a downturn in the commercial market for the next 2 years. So there won't be as many projects as you saw in 2017. It's going to be a little harder to find jobs in 18 and 19. And basically all jobs probably need to be on the table at this point. All markets addressed and looking at different opportunities that maybe you didn't look at before, or opportunities that you approached in a different way before. So we're going to talk about 208 as one of those new opportunities today and introducing sort of approaches to coming at the 208 market that'll hopefully make you a little bit more profitable in this segment as well. Some of the challenges for 208: smaller installations tend to have thinner profit margins. We see a correlation between smaller installations and 208, and we'll get into some of those reasons in a minute. But those small installations are tougher to navigate. You've got some greater overhead cost relative to the site that you're putting in and the energy that you're producing. So making those profits on the smaller jobs is a bit of a challenge. These roofs, because they're smaller, are a little bit more complicated. You can have HVAC, ventilation. You just have more obstructions. This is not your Inland Empire distribution warehouse with a whole mass of TPO white space to go after. These tend to be a little bit more chopped up roofs and a little bit more harder to navigate around. With those smaller rooftops, you also have limited rooftop access. You might not have an easy way to get up to the roof. It might not be entirely accessible. So getting up there all the time, anytime you need to perform operations and maintenance, could be a challenge. 208 inverters in general in the industry tend to be 480 volt inverters that have been derated for 208 operation. So what that means is you're getting essentially the same current inverter, like it's going to be able to handle X amount of current in both cases. But in one case, you're selling that product as a 480 volt solution. In the other case, you're selling it as a 208 volt solution. So you're seeing the power drop by more than half for very similar technologies to apply it to a 208 volt installation. So that comes with some trade-offs. We get, in general, lower efficiencies for these types of products and lower power levels. For legacy products, that's definitely true. We're going to introduce a product today that changes that. A limited selection of 208 volt inverters. Not a lot of manufacturers really focus on this segment. They're focused at higher voltage levels or in residential, especially if you look at things like Rule 21. So in California, we have Rule 21. Is a special certification for that, and not all inverters are certified to meet Rule 21 requirements, and so your selection gets even smaller. If you're in rapid shutdown markets, how do you satisfy those requirements as well? And so these are some of the challenges that we've seen in the 208 volt segment. So to overcome those challenges, we hire engineers. Engineers are known for coming up with great off-the-wall solutions sometimes, and you can see some examples here in these pictures of some what we might call kludgy type of solutions, walking the fine line between innovation and just using the wrong tool for the job. Obviously, this could be debated back and forth. Some of you might really want a rotisserie smoker connected to your tractor. Some of you might want a rotisserie smoker not connected to your tractor. But in general, we have a similar thing that happens in the solar industry when we look at servicing 208 volt buildings, and that is about switching to 480. So using a 480 volt inverter to satisfy a 208 volt job. And we want to run a poll now. When do you switch? And so what we're looking at here is a couple different sizes. I'll go ahead and launch this poll so you can see the selections. When are you using a 480 volt inverter, even though the project is a 280 volt building or a grid infrastructure? So a couple options available. You do it on all systems all the time, regardless of how big that is. Systems kind of around 50 kilowatts and above, that's your cutoff. 100 kilowatts and above, 250 kilowatts above, and 500 kilowatts and above. And you can see I'm using things that I are definitely smaller than megawatt level, just from the data that we've seen in the industry. There was really no reason to put megawatt on here. I don't think we'd get anyone filling that out. Not a lot of surprise. Some larger systems than I would have expected, actually. What we're seeing in the market tends to favor smaller ones, but we do see on every system, you've got about 20%. So about 1 in 5 people are saying in all systems, we're going to use a transformer and we're going to step down. Cutoffs of 50 and 100 kilowatts. So now you've got, about 6, that's pretty close to 70. I think that's a 70 if I add that up. So 70% right there that are going to look at 100 kilowatts and above. So in anything below that level, we're going to be looking at transformers. And that tends to feel about right for the 80-20 rule. And then we got some people using some on larger installations using a 208 volt inverter. Okay, I'll go ahead and hide those results. Yep, what we've seen in the market, so this is from CalNEM. CalNEM provides a lot of interesting data, and it allows you to go in and figure out what type of inverter is being used in different segments. So this is for commercial segment. It's pulled till April. That was the last data set that they had uploaded when I grabbed this. So you're looking at first quarter of the year plus April essentially. And what we're seeing out of this is the number of projects. So this is not weighted based on size in terms of kilowatts. This is based on how many projects are using what inverters. And so you're looking at the blue is your 208 inverter and the red is your 480 volt inverter. And you can see that it drops off very quickly, just like our survey responses did, where right around 100 kilowatts and below, we see some pretty good markets there for 208, 100 kilowatts and above. Really minor markets for 208. Most people are using the transformers in those cases. And what we've heard in talking to installers kind of corroborates this. You'll look at about 1 to 2 inverters to do a 208, and then you're usually going on a 480 volt inverter and using a transformer. And those transformers are being used primarily to cut down on the capital cost of those 208 volt inverters. As we mentioned before, there's some challenges there. But there's also some trade-offs, and we want to talk a little bit about the trade-offs because this blue versus this red, we actually think that we can push that out a little bit with some new technologies that are coming onto the market. And you can see kind of this orange triangle that's been colored in here. I think we can probably push it out almost to that orange triangle if you look at SolarEdge's new Synergy technology and what it can do. So some of the trade-offs for transformers, efficiency losses, you're putting in another electrical component. These efficiency losses can be anywhere between 2 and 5%. The more that you pay for it, the less you get in losses. But again, you're having that CapEx trade-off. So you do have to pay for that transformer. You do have to pay for wiring that system up. If you might end up pouring concrete pads, doing other infrastructural changes there that comes into the CapEx. There's operation and maintenance costs. So now you've got another large electrical component in the system. In a lot of cases, single point of failure type of setup, where if that system goes down, you need to be there very quickly to repair it. And then logistical challenges. So, where are you going to put things? How are you going to protect things, fence things, label things? So all of the logistics that goes into adding extra electrical components into the array. So now I'm going to turn over to Ben. Again, Ben is our Director of National C&I Sales for SolarEdge.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So we'll talk about the expanded 208 volt solution. So as Mike said, there's not a lot of native 208 string inverters on the market today. It's actually a pretty slim offering, and it's not like it was a number of years ago where central inverters were pretty prevalent in the market, and it was very easy to get even a 500 kilowatt central inverter at 208 volts. So today, for the most part, what you're looking at are 15 kilowatts or somewhere in that range or smaller. And as Mike said, it's really a 480 volt design that's been readjusted to give you a 208 volt output. The other thing is that as Mike showed in the CalNEM data, I mean the 208 market is pretty large. There's many parts of the country, whether it's up in the Northeast, in on older commercial buildings, you know, Central Valley in California, and in the Midwest, you know, it is very, very common to see 208 applications. So having a larger inverter block and a more cost-effective solution really, really helps for those projects, and that, you know, could open the door for more revenue and more profit for you guys as you deploy 208 applications. So, you know, maybe we'll start with just a, you know, quick overview of the SolarEdge commercial offering. It says 208 here, but it would apply for 208 and 480. So really, you know, what makes SolarEdge unique is we do have a string inverter here, a fairly simple low-cost string inverter. And on the 208 side, we have the 14.4, and now we have the Synergy 43.2. But we also have the optimizer, and that's really the, you know, the secret sauce that gives us the advantages of module level monitoring as well as, you know, higher production, et cetera. And we do have a suite of optimizers that are typically 2-to-1 for commercial applications. We do now have a turnkey offering for commercial applications where we include communication gateways, data loggers, environmental sensors, and then of course we have our, you know, cloud-based monitoring platform, which allows you to see remotely module level data. So that's the SolarEdge commercial offering. Now, if we look specifically at the Synergy 43.2 inverter, again, this is the largest inverter in its power class for 208 applications at 43.2 kilowatts output. It's also the highest efficiency inverter in its class, greater than 15 kilowatts. So you're looking at a 97% CEC efficiency. And it's also the largest 208 inverter with UL 1741 SA certification. So for those of you in California, that's Rule 21. For those of you in the ISO New England area, that now requires UL 1741 SA. And then, of course, in Illinois, where, you know, the SMART program is opening up, will also require UL 1741 SA. And then, of course, there's the other regulatory requirements that this inverter meets, NEC 2011-690.11 for arc fault, and then rapid shutdown, whether you're operating in a 2014 or a 2017 state. One of the other things that we're doing with the Synergy inverter, in fact, all of our commercial inverters now, that we supply RS-485 surge protection with the inverter. So besides having the required built-in surge protection on the AC side, we now provide a small device, and we do have a slide coming up shortly, that also helps protect your communication line. So some of the other more details or aspects of the Synergy 43.2 inverter, it does have a built-in communications card. And on the stringing side, you do have 3 separate or electrically isolated sets of 3 string inputs. So for a total of 9 strings on this 43.2 kilowatt inverter. We do have oversizing capability of up to 1.35. There are regions and cases where we could go above that. You know, you would just need to reach out to your SolarEdge application engineer in your region, and we could look at that on a case-by-case basis using a waiver process. And in terms of installation, it's a very easy inverter to install because it is modular and less than 100 pounds per inverter engine. So as you could see, it's really the 14.4 kilowatt inverter times 3, and with one pretty unique change, as you could see here, we eliminated the display. So we now use a SolarEdge application called SetApp, and you would use your smartphone with that application to actually set up the inverter. First thing that it does is downloads the latest firmware. So you're always operating from the latest firmware. And then you would use your smartphone and a very easy, interface to complete the commissioning of the site. And as the same as all SolarEdge Edge inverters. It comes with a standard 12-year warranty that can be upgraded for a low cost of 20 years. Okay, so why the 43.2? How is this different than the 14.4? Well, it's a larger inverter, and from a cost point of view, essentially you're getting 3 inverters for the price of 2. So it is a significant cost reduction for your 208 application. And besides the hardware cost, because it installs as a single inverter from an AC point of view, you're also reducing a significant amount of AC BOS, cabling, as well as breakers and AC panels. If we switch real quickly to the optimizer, so this is a good summary that, as Mike pointed out in the data sheet that you could download. It's a good summary of the optimizers that we offer that will operate with the Synergy 43.2 inverter, actually with all of our commercial inverters. And what we're listing here is one of the optimizers, that the P505, which is used for high current modules, and that's really a one-to-one optimizer. So that's a optimizer that can be used in residential applications, but also used here in commercial, and that gives you the maximum flexibility and production capability by going to one-to-one. The rest of the optimizers completes our line of commercial 2-to-1 optimizers, and that helps keep the cost of the project by minimizing the number of optimizers that you'll actually need on the project. And which optimizer do you use? Well, that really depends on your module selection, whether you're using a 72 cell, a high voltage module, or a high power or bifacial module. So each one of these optimizers has their specific application. And in terms of string sizing, you could see it ranges anywhere from 6,000 watts for the P505 up to 7,200 watts for the P800P and the P850. And we do have a minimum string size that you must meet. And again, please feel free to reach out to your SolarEdge application engineer to assist with any of the string sizing. But in general, the minimum string length would be 8 optimizers. So here's a little bit more detail on what a typical 208 string sizing would look like, whether you would use the 2-to-1 optimizers or 1-to-1, and depending on the module size and also the optimizer selection. So you could see that typically a minimum string length would be 15, and note that for the 2-to-1 optimizers, you can have one of the 2-to-1 optimizers operating with one module in the string. So that's why it has a minimum of 15. 8 optimizers 2-to-1 would typically be 16, but you can bring the string sizing down to 15 if one of the optimizers just has one module on it. So again, depending on the optimizer that you use, your string length for 2-to-1 would be anywhere from 15 up to 19 modules. And then of course, if you go to a 1-to-1 application, the minimum would be 8 up to 15. So not quite the amount of flexibility that we have on the 480 side, but certainly on par or even better than what you would typically see on a traditional 1,000-volt string inverter of the same size. So optimizing the project. So here we're going to talk about a number of the nuggets of value that I call it that SolarEdge offers when you use our inverters and optimizers on a commercial application, and we'll step through each one of these. So the first thing is commercial cellular. So SolarEdge does have a commercial GSM solution, and there's a picture of the GSM modem that you would actually install inside the inverter. So you wouldn't have to have it in an external box or any other device. It actually gets installed right inside one of the inverters. Call it the primary inverter. Okay, and this one modem is good for up to 500 kilowatts DC of your project. So, as per the poll that Mike just took, it seems like 70–80% of your 208 applications are well under that. So this should be enough. One modem would be enough for all of your 208 applications. And besides the modem, you do also need to have a data plan per inverter. And you could see here the cost for each inverter is $100. And that would be 5 years of monitoring or data plan. So if you have a 100 kilowatt project, we have a sample project coming up in a couple of slides, that would essentially be two 43.2 inverters. So you would have the modem costs, and then you would have $100 times 2, or $200 of data plan for 5 years. And that's a huge difference over using the 14.4 kilowatt inverter, where you would need 6 of them and 6 times 100. So definitely a cost reduction just on the cell modem side, moving to the Synergy 43.2. So this is a well geared modem to use with SolarEdge inverters. Tends to work very, very well. You get constant cellular connection for 5 years, and it provides you with, besides the inverter level data, also all the module or optimizer level data and any weather station that you may have attached to it. Okay, so that's one of the advantages of SolarEdge from a cost reduction point of view on your 208 application. The other one is more of the risk mitigation, and that's our Safe DC technology. So this is really the roots of SolarEdge, how the company got started, and the use of optimizers, where the default voltage of an optimizer when you have no grid present or when the inverter shuts down, for example, in the case of a rapid shutdown, the optimizers automatically default to 1 volt. So if you had a string of 8 or 9 optimizers, you know that your default voltage would be 8 or 9 volts. And that's really how the rapid shutdown works as well, and why we're able to so easily meet rapid shutdown requirements regardless of where it is in the country and which code level you're at. So this is really a huge advantage, and I don't want to minimize the importance of this. You really have maximum flexibility on where you could place the inverters. So you don't have to put them in the array. You don't have to be within 1 foot of the array. You don't have to be within 10 feet of the array. You really could put the inverter wherever you want, because effectively we're shutting down at the optimizer. So if you want to reduce your cable cost and put your inverter next to your AC interconnection point, you could do that. If you want to put your inverter inside the building or on the side of the building instead of on the roof, you could do that as well, and that will help you with your O&M costs. So that's the Safe DC technology. The other place where we're helping on the risk mitigation and also reducing your costs for your project is the RS-45 Surge Protection Device, or SPD. As I mentioned before, we're shipping that with all of our commercial inverters, not just the Synergy, but all commercial inverters. And it's a little plug-in card that plugs into the COM board, and then you would connect your RS-45 daisy chain amongst the inverters. So it provides that extra level of protection. It is a class 2 level protection, and it's a very simple device to install. One of the other cost savings that SolarEdge offers is the warranty extension, or you could look at it as your inverter replacement costs in the later years of your project. Because the optimizer already comes with a 25-year warranty, we don't need to be concerned about any warranty extension on that. And roughly 40% or so of the cost of the project is your inverter. So essentially, you only need to look at about half of your system, the SolarEdge system, in terms of looking at warranty extension or inverter replacement cost. And because the inverter itself is actually a very simple device, there's no PowerPoint tracking in it. We took that out of the inverter. We put that in the optimizer. the cost of the warranty extension is very low compared to most of other inverters on the market. So as you can see, the 43.2 kilowatt to extend it from 12-year warranty to 20 years is $1,350. One of the other offerings that we've just released to the market in the last 6 months or so is something else that could help with cost savings on projects. And we're highlighting it here because I think it's particularly applicable to 208 applications. 208 applications tend to be smaller. You know, you're not looking at multi-megawatt, you're looking at, you know, tens of kilowatts, maybe 100 kilowatts, a couple of 100 kilowatts. And the cost of a full weather station, you know, for temperature, radiance, and even wind is, you know, it is fairly high. So the satellite PR, it's a service that we offer at $99 per year per site. There's no equipment required on site. The accuracy is on par with any quality irradiance sensor, so about plus or minus 5%. And, you know, you just enter the data into the website, the physical layout, the angle and orientation of your modules, and it gets seamlessly integrated into our monitoring portal, and you're now able to calculate, it will calculate performance ratio for you. So that's, you know, huge cost savings, something to definitely consider for your small 208 application. Of course, we do have on-site weather stations as well, so we have all the sensors you may need, and it'll also work with third-party offerings. So if you still want to go the route of on-site hardware, we have that option as well. And in both cases, the data from the sensors or the satellite data would be integrated into the monitoring portal. So now that we've gone through some of the advantages of the SolarEdge solution, as well as, you know, more detail on the Synergy 43.2 kilowatt inverter, here we're going to look at a sample project. So this sample project, typical 208 application, apartment building, you know, it's a pretty cut up roof. There's actually 5 distinct parts of the array here. We're going to assume, of course, 208 grid connection. We'll also assume NEC 2017, so 1-foot perimeter voltage control. And we're also going to assume that the communication method will be a cell card or cell modem. So here what we've done is we've looked at 3 different scenarios. We're looking at, you know, what is commonly done today using a traditional 480 volt string inverter paired with a step down transformer, 480 to 208. We're also looking at, you know, what is a pretty common building block for a traditional 208 native 208 string inverter, so a 15 kilowatt inverter. And then, of course, we have the SolarEdge Synergy 43.2. So here we're looking at all of the CapEx costs. We're looking at the balance of system cost, which is your 4th line over here. We're looking at, of course, at the transformer costs with installation, which would only be needed under this 480 application. And we're also looking at rapid shutdown costs. Because this is 2017 and the array is broken up, you will need some level of rapid shutdown as you bounce from one part of the array to the other. So we're assuming the inverter is installed up on the roof, but to get to the next part of the array, you'll need to have some rapid shutdown box. We're also looking at 20-year warranty coverage. We're looking at cell modems and a cell modem plan. So this could be like a Verizon modem or some third-party platform that has a cell card. And then we broke it down into the non-inverter costs as well as the inverter cost, you know, based on typical pricing that we see on the market. So what's interesting to see here, after taking into account the ITC, is that the SolarEdge solution versus the native 208 traditional string inverter is a pretty dramatic cost savings moving to the Synergy product, here close to 11 cents a watt. And then even as you look at the 480 application, which, same number of strings, 16 versus 16, but you have that extra transformer. So despite the fact that those inverters are fairly low cost at 7 cents, there really is only about a 3-cent gap or advantage to the 480 application versus SolarEdge 208. So that's on the CapEx side. So here we haven't taken into account any of the other value items, some which I talked about already. But the other one that I want to talk about, and this is really a very key thing that many customers look at SolarEdge for when they're looking at their commercial applications, and that's the higher energy yield. And really, why is this happening? And that it's because of the module level MPPT that the optimizer allows. So the first thing is, just to repeat, the 43.2 is the highest efficiency 208, native 208 inverter in its power class at 97%. And there's no need for any step-down transformers. So as Mike pointed out earlier, your transformers will definitely attribute to some losses on the system if you're using a 480 native inverter. And that could range anywhere from a couple of percent, even as high as 5%, depending on the transformer. So why do we produce more energy? It's pretty straightforward. We have a PowerPoint tracker effectively on every module. And what we're able to do is we're overcoming module mismatch. So, the key part here to SolarEdge, being able to overcome that mismatch, even looking at applications here. So this example that we were going to, the 100 kilowatt on this apartment building, we're assuming no shading, no different angles or orientation. Everything is pointed in the same direction. And essentially what we typically see is about an average of 3% higher energy yield using SolarEdge in those situations. So here are the energy calculations that really help put SolarEdge over the top with our Synergy inverter. What we're doing here is we're using PVSys. We're doing 2 sets of calculations. We do a year 1 calculation, and you could see that SolarEdge has the biggest advantage. The next one would be the 15 kilowatt 208 inverter, where we would have a 2% advantage over that because of the native efficiency of the inverter, as well as the fact that we're overcoming module mismatch. And of course, we would then have a higher advantage versus the 480 volt inverter, because the 480 volt inverter would have some transformer losses because of the step-down transformer. Now, the next thing that we're doing is a year 20 PVSys model. And for those of you who are familiar with that capability in PVSys, about a year and a half ago or so, PVSys added the feature where you could look at production any year of the project while taking into account module mismatch over time. So using NREL data, PVSys has determined that as modules age, the mismatch tends to age at different rates. So as a result, what we see as, looking at this example, 3% more energy in year 1, by year 20, we're actually seeing 6% more energy because the modules tend to, diverge or the mismatch tends to grow. Likewise, if we look at the 15 kilowatt inverter, it starts at 2% more energy in year 1. By year 5, we have 5% more energy. So if we look at the average energy gain for SolarEdge over the 20-year life of the project, you could see that we're at around 4.3% versus the 480 and about 3.5% versus the 208 inverter. And now the question is, what is the value of that extra production? So using an NPV or net present value calculation, this is a very common number that we see across the country. For every 1% increase in energy, the net present value of that extra revenue stream of electricity, not even taking into account SRECs or other environmental benefits you may have in your state, it's about 2 cents. So that 4.3% of additional energy is worth about 9 cents a watt of extra value versus the 480, and about 7 cents a watt of extra value versus the 208 inverter. So, as per the CapEx cost that we saw on the previous slide, we already had an advantage versus the 15 kilowatt 208 inverter. The advantage becomes huge when you take into account the revenue stream. And even on the 480 side with the step-down transformer, we have a huge advantage there because of the extra revenue stream. So if your customer is looking at, the three different scenarios, and they're willing to take into account the production benefit over the long term, it really is a great approach to use the Synergy 43.2. Huge cost savings. So some of the other nuggets of value and places where SolarEdge is able to help save costs for your commercial application. Monitoring. So we do have module level monitoring, and it's actually free for 25 years. So the SolarEdge monitoring portal allows for 25 years of data hosting at no additional cost. And for those of you who have used third-party monitoring platforms, that does represent thousands of dollars of savings over the life of the project. And this is not something that we took into account in the project analysis we just presented. So this is an additional savings. And then, of course, because you have module level data, you are able to remotely view the site, not just at the inverter level, but right down to the module, and be able to make more informed decisions before you roll a truck. That's something that we call know before you go. And that could represent thousands of dollars of reduced truck rolls because you're able to do remote troubleshooting. The other key aspect that I'd like to talk about that SolarEdge offers, we pride ourselves on the size and the breadth and the depth of our service organization. So regardless of whether you require any pre-sales, project design support, we have a team of application engineers that could help with that. And on the project execution side, and I really encourage you to, let us know about your upcoming projects and, engage us, put it on our radar that you have a project coming up. And what we can do is we can assign a commercial program manager to help with hands-on training, whether we do it on site or remotely or by webinar. We have installation checklists, we have commissioning documents, and we also are able to provide commissioning support for your project. And then, of course, because of the SolarEdge monitoring portal, or whether it's our call center or one of our field service techs, they're able to assist with remote diagnostics and even repairing of sites as questions or concerns come up. So having gone through the SolarEdge value, the project analysis that we just presented, and specifically focusing on your 208 volt projects, we really see the Synergy 43.2 as a unique offering. 43 kilowatts of 208 inverters, not common at all in the market today. Very competitively priced for those who have used our 14.4 kilowatt inverter in the past. Again, you're essentially getting 3 inverters for the cost of 2, in addition to your AC BOS and installation savings by having 1 inverter, communication cards, etc. And then when you add the turnkey offering that SolarEdge brings to the table, whether it's cellular connectivity, of course, the integrated rapid shutdown, where we work so seamlessly and so nicely on rooftop projects, extended warranty costs, very, very low cost. And on the revenue side, how we were able to outproduce the competition because of the optimizer, the PowerPoint tracker at the module, and the fact that we're native 208 volts, eliminating any needs for transformers, installation costs, O&M headaches related to putting in a step-down transformer. And as we've shown on the project analysis, the production benefits and the overall cost benefit of using this native 208 inverter really makes your project competitive, and gives you a good alternative to other solutions that are on the market that may not give the same value that SolarEdge brings to the table.
Ben, any closing remarks?
No, just we talked of course, this is about 208 and the Synergy 43.2. Keep in mind that we do have a 480 volt version of the same inverter. So that would be the 100 kilowatt inverter, and there's actually the two module or two engine inverter, which is the 66.6. So really that same platform, the advantages on 480 would apply as well, using the larger inverter size. And again, please engage us, your local salesperson, SolarEdge salesperson, application engineer. Engage us on any projects that you may have. We'll help out on design input, design training, field training. Again, please reach out and we'll help as we can.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Ben, and excellent job as always. Happy Wednesday to everyone, and hope you guys have a great rest of the week.